Hello, we are Tajah Schall,
and Rachael Collins,
soul sisters at heart.
somatic psychotherapists and teachers by trade.
I, Tajah, am a cisgender woman, a Black queer mama to two biracial children. I'm a poet, a musician, a dancer, a drummer, a witch, and an equity consultant.
I, Rachael, am a cisgendered female. I am white, queer, and autistic. I am a mother of two. I am a weaver and a mover. I am a lover of the natural world and a shamanic practitioner.
Together, we have spent the last few years running the Somatic Counseling Master's Program at Naropa University. Having left academia, we are now setting out to create a more accessible place for folks in the helping professions to practice what it means to be in deep, embodied relationship with hard things.
We are committed to creating and providing a place to engage in contemplative practice, to be in deep inquiry around how to evolve and be relational in new ways. And our hope is to be a part of the current wave of folks who are inspiring an evolution in the fields of service to be more radically inclusive.
We invite you to practice with us. How can we take a deep breath and come back to the present moment when we find that we have gotten off of each other's rhythm? How can we stay with the discomfort that might come up and keep moving towards connection, even when we are on different rhythms, literally and metaphorically?
This is meant to be an immersive podcast. We invite you to listen intentionally, to step into the practice with us. Even if you're listening while you're engaging in the daily tasks of your life, which we know most of you likely are, we invite you to practice infusing magic and mindfulness into every moment as we go. Dear spirits of the land, dear ancestors, dear grandmother storyteller, may you be here with us today as we tell our story. The story of our shared medicine and the medicine that comes through our human relationship.
Okay. Oh, all right. I wonder if we leave that in this time, or like a second of it, a little bit of it.
So welcome to our listeners.
Hello.
In thinking about our episode today, Tajah and I have been really, I would say, in recent weeks, steeped in this sort of process of deepening into, like, how is our relationship relevant to what we are crafting and offering, not just here in the podcast, but in our group offerings that we are facilitating. And really the deep significance of our interpersonal friendship and the evolution of our friendship, and how that's really informed what we do together when we drum together, when we journey together, when we speak in this podcast together. So yeah, today is an episode of storytelling. Storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit different than our past episodes. We were talking to someone recently who's been giving us a little bit of guidance, and we shared the story of our friendship, and it was like, oh, that's actually really helpful context of how you got to be where you are today. And of course, we are so much of what we are doing, I think, is like weaving in context that gets left out of like history and what is around us. And yeah, that's important for our our relationship too. It's relevant. Yeah.
Mhm. Right. And so much of the core of our work and our offerings and all the different places that we are offering is about trying to support others in coming into relationship across difference, right?
Mhm,
Which is
mhm,
like essentially what we've worked quite hard at in
mhm,
deepening into over the course of our
mhm,
relationship. So there's a way in which the context of our teachings is deeply rooted in our human experience. And I
mhm,
think what we are trying to teach is for more humans to come into the depths of their human present moment experience within themselves and within relationship. So,
mhm, mhm.
a little story of how we came to be today. For the for those of you who have been listening, um, yeah, we invite you to really notice one, what happens for you when you start to listen to a story, but perhaps the story will touch something within
Mhm,
you and your own human experience. So I think that's the invitation today.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think I just wanna, like you said that so beautifully, and I think I just wanna name too of, like, how much for me personally, I wonder if this is true for you too, but, like, storytelling is such a part of my lineage, like,
Mm,
personally, like, both of my parents are really amazing storytellers. I grew up among, like, musicians, and I think musicians generally tend to be really amazing storytellers. There's, like, a lot of overlap there, and, several of the women who raised me are griots, which is the African word for or an African word for storytelling a storyteller. Yeah, and that, like, feels both a little bit vulnerable and because I haven't really identified myself as that way ever, and really sweet, to just be like, "Oh, yeah, that's part of my lineage also." Like, personally in my history and also, like, I think for anyone in this country who is a descendant of, like, enslaved Africans, that is a big part of our lineage too, of not being
mhm,
able literally not being able to being forbidden from reading and writing, and so having to pass stories down orally, and so, like, oral storytelling traditions inside of the church and just, it just is, like, a really rich history, so I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's here too."
mm, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for naming that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel in my own lineage that I don't feel like I have actual lived contact with folks from my lineage, um, that are steeped in the power of the storytelling.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
but interestingly, I have a grandmother spirit who shows up and identifies
Mm.
herself as grandmother storyteller.
Uh-huh.
Um, so she's often actually with me as we're recording these podcasts.
Oh.
Yeah, and has identified herself as like, I will support you in what gets to be spoken here. So I'm
Mhm.
often from a animistic sense of spirit connecting with this grandmother storyteller. Also because I think that's something that colonization has really separated, um, folks with, with my lineage pieces away from quite
Mhm.
violently.
Mhm.
Um, so there's I feel, of course, very different than the loss that you're naming. But in my own way, I also feel a deep loss of what I imagine to be the storytellers of
Yeah.
folks from my lineage, from Scotland and from Ireland,
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
Germany, right? Um, so yeah, a coming back around for me, I think, in this
Mhm.
lived experience from longing. Yeah,
Right.
from longing. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a we're taking a little bit of a digression here, that's okay, I promise you will tell a story, but it's such a, like, in when we were teaching, and I think part of what our students connected to, at least in my classes, was, like, that aspect of, like, I share a lot of my own stories when I teach, and stories of when I, like, really majorly screwed up, as well as stories when I, like, this is how it looks when it goes well, you know? Both are important, but, in the feedback I've gotten over the years, that's been something that pretty consistently folks have appreciated of, like, the vulnerability of, like, "I'm gonna share my own story because I'm a human, and maybe you'll learn something from it." And, like, yeah, n no, go figure. We learn from hearing other people's stories. Like, what an idea. What a concept, you know? Like, it just feels so simple and kind of obvious. And also then there, like you said, there's this severing of, academia and colonization and white supremacy that says that there's one right way of knowing and learning, and you know, it looks like academia, and that's different than quote unquote like
Mhm.
primitive storytelling cultures or whatever, which is just like such bullshit. But
Mhm.
anyway,
Totally. Mhm.
not gonna get not gonna get too much on on my high horse, but just can't help it
No,
a little
it's
bit.
relevant. Feels super relevant. And I think, it to me, it just, like, speaks to the intention that I'm wanting to call the listeners into right now is or, like, like, literally notice what happens in your present moment experience as we're offering a story
Mhm.
that comes with teaching through the story,
Yeah,
right? And how you've been conditioned to learn, likely in the United States, from a top down cognitive, let me read this in the literature, quote
right,
unquote,
right.
um, by folks who are privileged enough to get into the literature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, the
Ah,
story,
okay,
the
the
story.
story.
Mhm.
Well, I guess I'll start, and then you can just, we'll just pass the baton back and forth. Rachel and I met 13 years ago, 2012. Yeah, 2012, because that was when we started grad school. We were in the same cohort at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, studying somatic. It was called somatic psychology then, but it's changed now. And both in the dance movement therapy track. So we were in the same cohort of maybe 20 people. So it was relatively intimate. There weren't a lot of us in this 3-year program. But Rachel and I actually weren't friends when we were in school. um, and part of that, I guess I'll share, for me, and then Rachel, please do jump in. But I we had one class, and I would guess this was probably our second year, but I don't know. I could be making that up. But we had one class where we had to stand in like two lines facing each other, and no words. You're supposed to like look at the other person, look in their eyes, and let yourself notice like what projections came up. And I think they probably did it with a couple different like pairings, but I remember being paired with you at one point. And this was this class, that particular class on projections, inspired my very first tattoo. So it was really impactful for me to just notice how many stories I tell about other people based on very little real information. Like, of course, there's some real information, but it's like, oh, I have a whole backstory created about this person and what I think is true or not true, or, like my perceptions of them. And again, when that's unexamined, how dangerous that can be to just let those stories sort of run the show. Because they're still there. I still project onto people all the time. But I think at this point, I know myself well enough that I can tell when I'm doing it, and like, is this intuition or is this just actually like your own insecurity that you're putting on this person? And, I can kind of feel the difference. But anyway, so being standing in front of you for one of these like pairings, and
Oh boy.
I just like, I mean, what, Rachel, you're a beautiful woman. That is true. This is not, but like and you are very, like, I would say that you fit into like white Western, like Eurocentric beauty standards pretty well of like
Yeah.
thin, classically beautiful, long. I don't know if you had long hair at the time. I don't even remember, but very well dressed, very fashionable. Like, so you doing okay over there?
Oh no, I'm breathing. I'm breathing.
Oh, and so part of the projection for me, and again, I do want to hear from you because I know some of this is well, I want to hear how you receive this too, because I know these are sometimes common projections for you. But I had this story of like, oh my goodness, this like beautiful, thin, young, white, popular, like that was my story. It was like this like popular girl in the cohort and like all of the man, I feel like tender even saying this. So that's there. Yep. It was the projection was like that you were all the things that I am not. Oh, ouch. Oh, uh-huh. Yep. Mm. Oh, yeah, there's some emotion there.
Mm.
And I can feel even now the ways that like I have been so conditioned um to not see myself as beautiful, um, and not see people who look like me as beautiful, and to look to people who look like you as beautiful. Oh, okay, I'm gonna just like pause because that was new information that just came up just right now.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So I think the effect of those projections onto you specifically, onto your body was, "This is not someone who would wanna be friends with me." That was the story that came out.
Mhm. Mm.
Woo!
Yeah.
I know, man.
Yeah, that was
I thought this was gonna be a lighter episode.
yeah, certainly a level of discomfort, to receive on my end, yeah. Mainly about, like, the ways in which I'm hearing, like, the projection is not just about the interpersonal, but also about, like, what my body represents in terms of my identities that are visible, and how all of that internalized ick has impacted your sense of self and what you believe about yourself too. Not only about our interpersonal, right? Like how we're relating. Such an interesting weave to sort of like track as I'm hearing you talk about beginning in the projection and beginning in the insecurity, then going to the identity, then coming back to this other layer of hurt.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
hmm. Yeah, and like in my own way, I was of course having my own projections onto you, although I don't quite remember them being as like poignant as I've heard you name over the years, the
yeah,
ones that you remember. Um, I the most I think the thing that I can like name in this moment is that just my awareness of how young I was developmentally around my whiteness
mhm,
and my white fragility, meaning like I think I was likely interested in engaging with you and like didn't understand what I perceived to be as shyness from you.
mhm,
Um and sort of like a sense of retreat.
mhm,
Um, and because I couldn't recognize and I didn't feel what it meant to be in a white body, like thin, attractive, all the things, and to be relating with you in your body. Like I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't understand my impact. And I had no idea about how to own my whiteness and how to like
mhm,
recognize the impact that that has in the interpersonal exchange because I was just in my own experience, which like at that point in my development, like I did not know like I was very early on in my healing journey. I didn't know that I was neurodivergent. I
mhm,
didn't know the intricacies of why my communication and my group behaviors would come out in the way that they did come out early
mhm,
on in our cohort.
mhm,
So like to hear that you perceive me as being a popular person when in my inner in my inner experience I have never felt like I can engage fluidly in social
mhm,
situations like and I predominantly get the feedback I think from social like people in social like experiments. That's funny. That's the word. It feels
yeah,
like that. Social
yeah,
experiment of like people telling me, I'm not sure if you like me. And me being like, I don't know how to show you that I like you because what
mhm,
does that even mean? Right.
Yeah.
without knowing my identity pieces. I was just sort of like swimming in this like experience of being an unidentified neurodivergent human and not understanding why everybody isn't walking around just telling everybody what's going on in their inner world and naming
Mhm.
things bluntly as they are.
Mhm.
So I was just like chronically confused and didn't know that I was confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my projection was like, why isn't this woman speaking up in class? As opposed to as opposed to understanding like, oh, let me look at the body that Tajah is in. Let me look at the
Mhm.
body that I am in. Let me look at our exchange, right? So I was just like, well, I don't know. Like
Right,
just
right.
running with the narrative of like I have very few friends and few people can tolerate me and that's that.
Mm, yeah. Oh, oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Funny how, like, the intrapersonal experience can be so different than how we're being perceived or read from the outside, and it is true, like, on a personality level, like, well, is this true? I was gonna say it is true that I am shy. I'm actually not sure that that's true. That's a story that I've carried a lot of my life, but now I'm like, I think it's actually just that I, one, am often in white spaces, and in our cohort, which is a very white space, in a room full of 20 white, like, I just was not gonna be, like, the loudest person in the room. That just was not
Totally.
safe. Um,
Mhm.
and I think there's a way in which because I've spent so much of my life in white spaces, I started in a private school, Quaker school in Philadelphia, when I was in 5th grade. I have gotten really good at making myself palatable in white
Mhm.
spaces, which means making myself smaller and quieter.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
actually know how much is true. Like, am I shy? I don't know. I'm certainly awkward. That's true. That's one of the things that, like, you and I actually really have in common. It's like, I don't know how to handle social experiments. Like, I don't know. Like, that's true. But I'm like, I'm not actually sure that it's true that I am shy. I think it's just that I am
Mhm.
cautious
Mhm. Mhm.
and but, like, the people who know me, I don't know. I'm, like, questioning now what that word even means, which is neither here
Mhm.
nor there. Like, what does it actually
Mhm.
mean to be shy? Just, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. 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 So, what I'm coming back to is sort of this idea of like, oh, early on, like we spent countless hours in this small, intimate circle with each other, and we really didn't know each other at all.
No.
Like not even the beginnings of
Right.
knowing each other. One, because I think both of us had work to do to know ourselves,
Yes.
but also like we didn't approach each other. Like we
Right.
were peripheral. Like I
Yeah.
feel like like we were in the same social hangout
Yes.
spaces, but
Yeah.
never like one-on-one sort of
Right.
connection where I had the opportunity to get to know you, which to me I think also was about my own white fragility and being like, ah, this black woman, she's not gonna want to talk to me. Like, why she want to talk to me? Yeah, like, "Ugh, I'm gonna do it wrong or I'm gonna offend
Yeah.
you in some way, right?
Yeah.
So like, whoop, never mind. Let me stay
Yeah.
back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't really connect until after we had both graduated, and like you said, we had a lot of and still do a lot of overlapping friends, um, or folks that we were in proximity to, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then at some point a few years after we graduated, were we in the supervision group first? Did that happen first? I think that might have happened first. I don't know. We were at some point in a peer supervision group together, and that sort of started to build, I think, some sort of parallel intimacy. And then probably because we knew each other from the supervision group, when you had this idea, which I'll let you share about, you had this idea to call together a group of women, right? That was the we know now that not everyone in the group actually identifies that way, but at the time, that was the
Hmm.
intention. Yeah.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've always had a harder time deepening with women for a variety of reasons. One of them being like, I think white women have in this country in the United States have a hard time being in community with each
Yeah.
other, which is just that's a whole nother episode. But um, yeah, my therapist at the time was like, you should start a women's circle. Maybe that would support you in feeling like you had a sense of community. Cause I was also working in community health and I was like losing my mind, like
Mm,
legit burnout, under resourced, didn't know like what to do with myself coming home from work, just kind of feeling like I was about to die essentially, in my nervous system. And so I think it was around that time where my therapist was like, how about a women's circle? How about building? You don't have one that you see that you want to join. So build it. Build it and they shall come. And so I was like,
mm,
well, okay, thanks for planting that seed. And I reached out and Tajah, I wish I remember why I contacted you, but to be honest, I have no fucking idea. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I reached out to the humans that I did reach out to. And then we formed, right? We
mhm,
formed, we set our intentions of building community, of having an intimate space where we could hold each other and support each other and like essentially be real with each other, which is so interesting now that I'm saying this. And I'm like, oh, that's sort of what we're doing with our group offerings, right? Is like,
mhm.
but from a different angle with supporting the helping professionals. Um, but yeah, it was like, well, fuck this shit that I can't find community where we can be real with each other. Like,
Mhm.
okay, let's create it. And so we came together and we committed to meeting, what was it, biweekly? I think we started off every other week or once a month, something
I think it
quite
was once a month,
frequently
but yeah, it was pretty free. It was like we were committed. Yeah.
for
Yeah. For
years. For
years.
years,
Yeah.
we went through this group. And we had many ruptures and repairs through the group, and we got to know each other in a different way.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
I want to invite you to share your story
mhm.
of in being in the group.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, yes, years and years we were in this group and, there were times when people would move away and the group would get smaller and there are like these moments of like dropping in intimacy that I remember of like, oh, something usually a rupture and a repair. Like going through that cycle. And I feel like this happened early on in my motherhood journey. And I was one of the first in the group to become a parent. It was me and one other woman who we were the first to become parents. And I was really struggling. Again, whole other episode, but like many, many systemic reasons why I felt so isolated and alone in my parenthood. I did not live close to any of y'all, any of my friends. My family's on the East Coast. I was home with the baby and my partner was working outside of the home and I just felt I was losing my mind. And so and I think I talked to my therapist and there was something about like I don't remember if I had asked y'all, if I'd reached out to y'all for like support directly of like babysitting or something. There was like a specific ask. And my perception, I'm sure is more nuanced than this, but my perception was like nobody rallied, like nobody sort of like,
Mm.
you know. And again, now looking back, I'm like, it's actually much easier when you're already a parent to understand that call, like to be like, oh yeah, I can add one more kid and take, like it's much different now. But at the time, being one of the only new moms, my experience was like, I need my community. We're supposed to be in community because we're doing this group. And like whatever the direct ask was, I felt unmet in that. And so the next time we met all together, I kind of like confronted y'all. And I don't remember exactly how it started there. And then it became sort of sorry, my cat is here if anybody is watching this. She wants to be present, Miss Tina. Anyway, however it happened, it became this like very sort of like, where are y'all? Like this group of white women. I'm the only black woman here. We've never really talked about this. And my expectation was that y'all just were not. It was like this is the end of it. That's been my experience with white women is like the second I bring up race, that's it. That's the end of the relationship. And so I was like sort
Mhm.
of kind of at my wit's end and just sort of like I can't contain it I can't contain, it just sort of like came out unfiltered. Um, and to my surprise, y'all didn't go away. Like like different people responded differently within the group, but generally it was like, "Oh no, we're here and we're listening and like we want to hear more about this." And that I remember as being like a definite drop in. And
Mhm.
there, of course, over the years, were still many more layers of rupture and repair around race specifically, and stuff around gender came up in the group too. But that was the first time I had the experience of like, oh, I can sit in a group of white women and be kind of pissed off, actually, because that's like a big trope for Black women of like, I'm not allowed to be angry because then I'm like aggressive and blah blah blah, whatever. And for y'all to still like meet me and to still be there. So that was the beginning of a reparative experience for me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, like, for me, it being the beginning of, like, seeing you. Like, I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh," like,
Mhm.
it sucks that you as a Black woman needed to say that to us and me as a white woman, and I'm really fucking grateful that you did because it woke
Mhm.
me up a little bit. I was like, "Oh, shit." I wasn't
Mhm.
weaving the intellect, right? Because I studied this and I
Yeah.
read the books and but I wasn't yet integrating that into my embodied relational experience, right?
Yeah.
And that moment that you took that risk with us as a group, I remember just being like, "Whoa." I mean, of course, really fucking uncomfortable to be called out. Real uncomfortable. But we had this commitment, right? I was so invested in being like, "Oh, right. Okay. Oh, this is what like this is what being confronted with my whiteness feels like. Oh
Mhm.
god, I don't like this at all." And then
Mhm.
also, wow, I can actually see you and understand you a little bit more. And again, it's so layered here because I'm not trying to say like, "Oh yeah, let's do it again and have that labor be on you." And also, it was a turning point, right?
Mhm.
Cuz like, for me in my own journey in understanding how my whiteness influences my interpersonal relationships, like, um, my experience is like I can't see what I have not yet felt in my body,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's gotta slap me across the face in order to actually come into my body and out of the intellect. I can talk
Mhm.
about this shit all day long, right? But to feel it in relationship, to feel it in my body around somebody that I deeply care for was
Mhm.
definitely a turning point, um, a turning point for me in just, like, seeing you differently, seeing
Yeah.
I mean, and hearing the longing,
Yeah.
and then, of course, then having to sit with my discomfort of the massive miss that happened, right? And
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
hurt that just, like, went
Yeah.
over my head at first. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big moment for us, and, for me too, this, like, the beginning of a reparative experience. I've seen this conversation happen a little bit, in some of the, like, online social spheres of, like, um, at least among Black folks, of, like, is it possible to actually be friends with white people? Like, really, truly, genuinely, and there's a
Mhm,
wide, like with anything, a wide
mhm,
range of opinions, and I understand why, because I think before that wasn't the only experience, but, like, before this particular group, like, y'all, I might have said no, or at least internally, like, among my
mhm.
people would have been like, "No, I don't have one." Like, I know plenty of white people, yes. Do
Yep.
they really know me? Like, do they really see me and know me? Probably not, like, we're cool, but, like, they're not really my friends, because I can't bring all of me, and so that, again, I think the experience of this group and this relationship with y'all and you in particular is, like, has led in a lot of ways to my work around what happened, and then I married a white guy. That happened too. It's like, how do we actually, like, truly be known across our differences? Because he and I have had our versions of this too, of, like, when we first started dating, he didn't know all of me or see all of me. I didn't trust him to hold all of me at all. We've had our versions of that too, and so this question of, like, can we truly genuinely be in a relationship across our differences and have everybody be able to bring their full selves to the table? That, I think, is the gift. Is like, it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but if we can get there, there is such a gift of, like, really truly seeing each other that happens on the other side that I think is worth, the grinding of it, with the right people, with the right people.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think I come back to like this investment that we both had of like being in relationship, right? Like it wasn't like you were some stranger walking down the road. We were trying to be intentional around how we care for each other and how we support one another, which requires us to actually fully see, right? To fully, what I mean by see, like to be in contact with all parts, right? Or as many as are possible in any given moment.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very complex, but I think like that. Hmm, I feel really grateful for the risk that you took.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I can. This is again maybe another episode, but I can like web into all the ways that that one moment has also like made me a more effective human and like a better therapist and like somebody who can hold more nuance and complexity and recognizing the things that the most I like to consider myself as like a person where like integrity and doing no harm is like paramount importance for myself and the humility within myself that is required to face the things that like, oh, I did not fucking see that. Nope. I
Mhm.
didn't get it. I missed you in that moment. And I missed you so much that I didn't even think to broach race, right? I didn't
Mhm.
even think to bring that in.
Mhm.
And how that would be relevant because we're in this interpersonal process and we're doing this lovely thing. And aren't we
Right.
all just like having the same experience? Well,
Right.
no, we're not having the same experience. And
Right.
again, it's like, I know that up here in my mind, but it's a
Yeah.
whole different story to live it. Right, to live it and
Yeah.
to practice it, which requires, I think, deep contact and willingness to like feel the feels, the full
Mhm.
range, not just the joy of connection, right? But like oh crap, there that is. Oh, I thought I was immune to that. Yeah. No, not me. Dear
Mhm.
perfect white woman.
Mhm.
Couldn't
Mhm.
possibly be me. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, that is, I think, for a lot of therapists where we miss our clients is around one, focusing on the interpersonal and like, oh, I interpersonally care so much for this person and that's all that matters, that's enough without, considering these other pieces and um, context of history and race and culture and oppression and all those things. And then when it does show up in the room, and it's always in the room, but when it shows up explicitly, going to immediately like, oh, but I'm one of the good ones. Like this sort of like defensiveness or like, um, I'm not a bad person. I really care about you. And again, missing that like, yes, you can love somebody and care about them, and still you can miss them across race
Mhm.
or across gender or across, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And that it's not
Mhm.
about you and your character. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just like, this is a miss because how could it
Mhm.
not be? Because we are
Mhm.
so socialized not to talk about any of this shit ever. So of course you're
Mhm.
gonna miss each other, like
Mhm.
we're breaking all the
Mhm.
rules by talking about it. Like you're not supposed to. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to talk about it.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Right. And something I think about the context that we had created with this group really allowed us to have a space to talk about it.
Mhm.
Essentially, right? We had community where we very clunkily and messily talked about it.
Right.
And didn't get it right. And I think for me, and when I think about how our relationship has deepened since then, like a part of how that moment really opened me up to not just seeing you in a different way, but seeing my own self in a different way. Um, I think a part of what that did for me was actually like build some resilience for what's often called as white fragility,
Yes.
right? Of like, okay, because I think for me, that fear of getting it wrong or fear of triggering you or making you upset by asking or checking in, hey, what about race? How's that applicable right now? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? I think it opened the doorway for me to find a little bit more freedom to engage directly with you and to
Mhm.
investigate and to ask. Um, and to not shy away, even though still I feel shy in some moments. But I think, at this point in our relationship, I'll just be like, I'm feeling shy.
Right.
And here's the thing, so like narrating the experience, it's not that it's gone, but the rapport that we've built over the years, I think, has allowed me to then bring my inner world, to bring my process, to bring the messiness alongside of the question, right?
Right.
Alongside of the inquiry. Um, because it's not perfect and I still don't know what it means to be you in your body. And I'm
Right.
still going to fuck it up sometimes. Um, but I can at least try to be messy around it and be like, I'm feeling uncomfortable about this thing. Let's see.
Yeah. 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 And then, there's other parts of the story that we'll have to come back to another time that, and, also sort of weaving in, we talked about this a little bit before on the podcast of like our different lineages and our ancestors came in when we started drumming
Mhm.
together. And that was a really fun, like, how do we broach this and our different rhythms and our different drums and, what does rhythm mean? And when our ancestors show up and start dancing together, like, what does that mean? Yeah, but I don't know that any of that could have happened without this sort of foundational rupture repair moment and all the ones that have come after.
Right, right. No, it's not the only one.
Not the only one.
It's
Yeah.
not the only one, right. No, but I love that leap that you just took to the transpersonal, right? To the realm of the ancestors, because I think that's how our work has deepened because of the interpersonal foundation that didn't ignore our differences, right? But the interpersonal foundation that like actually centered our differences and like brought them to the heart of what we were doing, I think then made space for us to look to the ancestors, to feel safe enough with each other where we could actually connect with something in an animistic perspective, right? From that transpersonal lens, because otherwise, like, ooh, let's guard that practice at all costs, because
Oh,
the one that has, for my ancestry, like the ones that have gotten, my ancestors burned at the stake, right? Like
yeah.
to show that part of the way that I connect with the realms that are not just this physical realm. So for us to connect and to both have the visions, right, of our ancestors actually dancing together has been quite profound. And I think, the work that we're offering right now is so much around supporting the humans in deeply embodying their interpersonal reality so that we can start to recontextualize, right? To bring in connection to parts that are outside of the physical realm to support the interpersonal. And my point is like our ancestors, this is how I've received Tajah. Curious to hear your way of saying this, but like to see the vision of our ancestors dancing together and to receive their message of like, oh yes, this is the work. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
this is what we are longing. This is what's needed. More of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yep. Ditto. Yeah. Yeah. It's been really profound. It's been really profound.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Ooh, I feel
Woo!
wiggly. Love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well.
Mhm. So this is the story, right? This is our story, not the story. This is woo. No, this is our story that drives what we do, what we're offering. Yeah. So perhaps an invitation for listeners to actually think about like what's your story?
Mhm.
How does your story actually lead you to where you are today? Yeah. Mm.
Mm. All right. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. We hope you got something useful out of this conversation. If so, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find out more about what we're up to on Instagram at soul_embodied_connections. And if you have questions, reflections, or feedback for us, Or if you have suggestions about topics that you'd like us to discuss on future episodes, you can email us at soulembodiedconversations@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.